Okay, so we're looking at different ways of navigating our way through the world of major chords and dominant chords. So we've picked a couple of specific keys that kind of lend themselves to these different types of chords. So E major, obviously we have our big E major sounds here, which we all know and love, and then we've got our little E shape here, and then, you know, we're building our E off our C chord shape, picking the E root note there, and then we're coming up to our A-shaped bar chord, so building off the A shape, we find our root note on the 5th string E and build it up that way. They're the most obvious ones. Then when we come through, we have our first inversion, the kind of real pretty big open first inversion chord for E. So what I'm doing is I'm finding the 3rd of the chord, G sharp, on the bottom string, then E, and then the little finger's picking up the B, and then we're repeating the B and E on the top strings, muting the 5th string. And that kind of wants to creep up to the A, which is nice. And another little chord shift we did there was using that same principle, but now starting on the F sharp and the A, using the open D string, and then moving that shape up. So it's effectively the same, but I'm just utilising the open string on the first one. And you can't really stay there as long, it's definitely a part of the movement up to that. And then the same principle here, same first inversion kind of shape. We've got the G sharp on the bottom, and we've got our little A-shaped E chord out of that position. And the great thing about this is that we've got the major pentatonic scale right here, and these little kind of shapes. You can use this double stop off this. I'm just putting my 2nd finger there on the 10th fret, and that one on the 11th fret on the 3rd string, playing that back off against that shape, and then these kind of Hendrix style things here as well, and the other stuff we've done before. There's a kind of place to end up on that E major chord. Then we've got our little kind of chord soloing options, if you like, where we come up here and we take, this is our E-shaped situation up here, we use different fingers, 2nd and 3rd finger, we just grab a couple of those notes and they can move in between there and then resolve back to the top part of that E chord. And they can work chromatically as well. They like working chromatically. So the one in between is a bit funky as well. It's kind of like a diminished sound, but it works really well against that. And then just one couple other little handy shapes that kind of fill in the E world is first finger up on the B note here, on the 3rd dot of the guitar. So what's that, 7th fret? And then 2nd finger coming through here, and 3rd finger there. So you got and you always bring it back to, you know, where are we in terms of our E? Well, this is our kind of root E chord here. So I'm just looking at using parts of that to create a little shape. But it's a shape that kind of stands alone. And then you've got the 4th there as well. You've got the A note that works nicely in with that, or whatever. And then from there also doubling up, taking the top part of that and just doubling up the 5th and the top. Unlike this thing of exposing the 3rd and playing that kind of traditional thing off there, this is more a kind of a block kind of chord that you might want to use just to accentuate an E chord. And that's it, I think, for the major chords. So then going into the dominant chord world, we've picked B. To kind of make use of the B7 territory we've got down here, there's this open, especially this open B, is very similar to the idea of playing in E, where you've got the open string against these kind of bluesy notes. In B, we've got our blues scale here, starting on the 4th fret on the 3rd string, B. Using it, we've got open strings in the bottom of the blues scale, which is really great as well. So you've got this D, this minor 3rd down to the B, then you've got the open A down to the F sharp, and the flat 5th down to the E, and then back to the B. You don't have the low D for the low minor 3rd like you do in E. But you get quite a lot of the blues scale in that lower register, which can be really cool because you can play off that play off that open string. So it's a good little swampy area to mess around with down there. And then and also that top string. It's a nice little lick to do, is just open F sharp. So just mess around with that a little bit and try to get that top string working for you as well. And then, so that's that whole sort of B7 bluesy kind of area. Then when we come up to here, we've got the 13 chord we've looked at before, where you're playing on the 3rd dot, 7th fret, you've got the 1st finger and the 2nd finger both in the same fret, playing the root note B and A, the dominant 7 in the chord. And then you've got 3rd, E flat, and then you've got these guys on top to create this nice jazzy B13. Then what I do is I replace this guy with this guy, and I create this little cluster, and that kind of takes the top strings as well, and it's also kind of handy just to move around, and it's quite funky to, but it's very stripped back. It's just the basic dominant chord, the dominant chord ingredients, you know? And that can work through, and then we have to look at that in F sharp as well. The F sharp's another interesting key because we have some of the blues scale down here. And then the two top strings, the open strings, work really nicely in F sharp, whether it's a minor chord or a dominant chord or just a straight major chord. Okay, and then a little kind of delta blues kind of shape that happens. This is based on our D7 down here that we've used quite a lot. When we think about our D7, that's the D, so that's the real D chord. That's our dominant 7. The other two notes stay the same. So if we're building that up here, we find our B on the 12th fret, B, B. And then all you've got to be careful of is that you use, if you want to have the root note here, you have to use 2nd, 3rd and 4th finger to create that little 7 chord. Or if you want to do it with those fingers, that's fine too, it just works. It's another great little chromatic mover, it likes to move chromatically like that. And then building some nice kind of more, I guess, melodic sounding, or more sophisticated, if you like, sounding dominant chords back off the root note. So instead of building everything from the root note up or forward, we're kind of now in the process of looking at what's back in this area. So here really it's just, this is a beautiful chord, the 11 chord we call it. Is really just like an A shape, just a classic A shape, but with a B on the bass. And by having the B on the bass, it becomes a dominant chord. B, A is the dominant, this is the 9 in the chord, and the 11, and then the dominant 7 again. So it doesn't have the 3rd like a lot of these chords, but it has other elements. And it resolves beautifully back to the 1. And then to bring the 3rd into the chord, we just go back. So we do get that E flat. And we get this lovely 13 note that we had before, which is really just the G sharp like that. So that one can then shift. And always, you know, think about going back even to like an E major 7 or something sweet off that one to see how that kind of sounds. And then just taking the A shape again and putting the B on the top instead of the bottom, and then resolving that as well. Just letting that shift back. And that's a great little way to play a high kind of B dominant chord when something else is happening, like. Okay, there you go.